Retirement virtual webinar. We are honored to introduce Dr. Jennifer Omelo-Alzegas as our invited speaker. Dr. Jennifer Omelo-Alzegas is a board certificate air node flow specialist and a member of their society, the Philippine Society of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. She is currently doing private and charity work at several institutions in the metro, as well as holding private clinics. She had her medical education at the University of St. Thomas Hospital from 2014 to 2009, and completed her residency training at the Philippine General Hospital from 2010 to 2013. She then underwent training abroad in two subspecialties, head and neck oncology surgery in Taiwan from 2015 to 2016, that focused on the management of benign and malignant tumors, as well as microvascular refractory surgery in Thailand from 2018 to 2019, that specialized in the reconstruction of defects after surgery of the primary tumor to restore form and function. Today, Dr. Jennifer Omelo-Alzegas presenting topic is surgical management of benign salivary gland tumors. Please give a round of applause to welcome Dr. Jennifer Omelo-Alzegas.
This is in commemoration of the retirement of our dearest Professor Shenko Hao, who was my mentor during my head and neck fellowship in Taiwan back in 2015. The lecture will focus on the common benign parotid gland tumors, how to select the appropriate surgical technique depending on the tumor location, as well as touching on the risk of post-operative complications. The goal of any surgeon is to be able to reach a balance between achieving good tumor excision to decrease the risk of recurrence while minimizing the possibility of post-operative complications. Among the benign salivary gland tumors, majority occurs in the parotid gland, around 60 to 75%, and most of which are seen in the female population. It is because of this that my lecture will focus mainly on the surgical management of parotid tumors. Most parotid tumors occur in the superficial lobe, and among these benign tumors, the most common is your pleomorphic adenoma, also called benign mixed tumors. Second most common are Warthin's tumors, comprising around 25 to 32%. Pleomorphic adenomas comprise a combination of epithelial and mesenchymal tissues of varying amounts. These tumors, although benign, do have malignant potential, with the risk being proportional to the time the lesion is in situ, around 1.5% for the first 5 years, and increasing to 9.5% risk after 15 years. Pleomorphic adenomas, again, are the most common benign parotid tumors, occurring mostly in the superficial lobe. These tumors lack a true capsule and characteristically have these pseudopodia, which are finger-like projections that insinuate into the surrounding parotid tissue beyond the tumor border, which increase the risk of recurrence if incomplete excision is performed, such as in simple enucleation. The second most common benign parotid tumor is Warthin's tumor, occurring frequently among middle-aged to elderly patients, especially smokers, with a male preponderance. 15% of these tumors may be multifocal, and 10% may present bilaterally. Traditional treatment has been parotidectomy due to the multifocality of the tumor, but in certain situations, active surveillance and other less invasive treatments have been proposed. Let us move on to the indications and how to select the appropriate parotid surgical technique. The decision on the type of surgical procedure to perform is determined by the tumor size, the location, and the histological phenotype, and is thus individualized per patient. As a surgeon, you should have the ability to switch intraoperatively from a conservative to a more extended surgical technique when the need arises. It is therefore advisable for novice surgeons to learn and practice well identifying the main trunk of the facial nerve by performing partial superficial or superficial paroidectomy for superficially located tumors before proceeding to doing more conservative techniques such as the extracapsular dissection. Deciding to perform more conservative techniques because of insufficient surgical experience in identifying the nerve should be avoided, as this increases the risk of recurrence and complications. Enucleation or intracapsular dissection is no longer performed, as it involves tumor removal within the capsule, leaving behind the pseudopodia in surrounding normal parotid tissue, and is thus associated with a high recurrence rate of 30 to 50%. This method was developed in the early 20th century at a time when nerve monitoring, bipolar coagulation, or visual magnification were unavailable, and avoiding injuring the facial nerve was the main concern during that time. Extracapsular dissection is differentiated by its technique wherein parotid tissue is dissected near the tumor, involving removal of 2 to 3 millimeters of surrounding normal parotid tissue, and identification of the main trunk of the facial nerve is not done. This technique requires proper patient selection, the use of facial nerve monitoring, and visual magnification. Ideal candidates for extracapsular dissection are small, mobile tumors measuring 2 centimeters or less, located at the caudal part of the parotid gland. However, there is still the risk of encountering 1 or 2 branches of the facial nerve as you dissect the tumor, as well as risk of tumor rupture if you go too near the capsule. And so, this technique is technically demanding and requires more expertise and experience. Ideal candidates for extracapsular dissection are tumors measuring 2 centimeters or less, mobile, located at the periphery of the parotid, especially in the tail, wherein you expect no contact with any branches of the cervical-facial division of the facial nerve. Those located more anteriorly may encounter the marginal mandibular nerve. Some advantages of this technique are lower risk of facial nerve palsy, Graves syndrome, shorter surgical time, and preservation of the parotid gland function. A limited skin incision for these small tumors is usually enough, omitting the usual preauricular incision. The skin flap is developed a few millimeters away from the tumor, and surrounding 2 to 3 millimeters of normal parotid tissue is excised along with the tumor. Proper dissection of the tumor away from the sternocleidomastoid and posterior belly of the digastric can help mobilize the tumor and facilitate dissection. For more experienced surgeons, extracapsular dissection may be an option for larger tumors measuring 2 to 4 centimeters located at the caudal portion of the parotid gland that have higher possibility of contact with some branches of the cervical-facial division, or those at the cranial superficial part of the gland with possible contact to the temporal branch. However, with these larger tumors, the benefits of extracapsular dissection diminish, since the extent of skin incision will approximate that of a partial superficial paroidectomy, the danger of facial nerve injury increases, and surgical time is not shortened. Intraoperatively, if needed, the surgeon must be able to shift from extracapsular dissection to partial superficial or superficial paroidectomy if warranted. Next is partial superficial paroidectomy, wherein dissection of the facial nerve is limited to the main trunk and the branches within the vicinity of the tumor. Dissection of all branches of the facial nerve is not done. In addition, compared to extracapsular dissection, a generous cuff of parotid tissue surrounding the tumor is removed around 2 centimeters, but does not sacrifice normal parotid tissue that is distant from the tumor. This technique is indicated for mid-sized tumors around 3 to 4 centimeters in the superficial lobe located near the main trunk of the facial nerve. Partial superficial parotidectomy is somewhat in between a formal superficial parotidectomy and your extracapsular dissection. Main indications for partial superficial parotidectomy are middle-sized tumors measuring 3 to 4 centimeters on the caudal part of the parotid gland with contact to the facial nerve main trunk, or larger tumors located near the main trunk and the cervical-facial division, and for those at the cranial portion of the gland near the branches of the temporofacial division. On the other hand, superficial parotidectomy involves identifying the facial nerve main trunk and all its branches and removal of all parotid tissue lateral to the facial nerve. This technique can actually be performed for dissection of every benign tumor located in the superficial lobe of the parotid gland and is still considered by some as the gold standard in parotid surgery. Further indications would be large tumors with contact to multiple branches of the facial nerve, but without extension to the deep lobe of the gland. As mentioned, superficial parotidectomy is indicated for medium to large-sized tumors with broad contact to the central parts of the facial nerve and its branches, but without involvement of the deep lobe. Total parotidectomy is usually reserved for tumors involving or extending to the deep lobe of the parotid gland, and it involves removal of all parotid tissue, both medial and lateral to the facial nerve. Main disadvantages are higher incidence of temporary or permanent facial nerve palsy, Cray syndrome, and aesthetic deformity. Total parotidectomy is usually reserved for tumors involving or extending to the deep lobe of the parotid gland, and it involves removal of all parotid tissue, medial and lateral to the facial. This algorithm shows the criteria that influence decision-making in benign parotid surgery. To summarize the anatomical criteria we just discussed, the ideal candidates for extracapsular dissection are small, mobile 2 centimeter or less tumors located in the peripheral caudal area of the parotid gland and anticipate no contact with any branches of the facial nerve. Possible candidates are medium-sized 4 centimeter tumors in the caudal or cranial area of the parotid gland. Partial superficial parotidectomy is indicated for larger tumors, more than 4 centimeters, located in the caudal or cranial part of the parotid gland, near the main trunk of the facial nerve. Tumors involving the superficial lobe, located near the main trunk, with expected contact to both the cervicofacial and temporofacial branches of the facial nerve, are managed with superficial parotidectomy, while tumors involving or extending to the deep lobe will require total parotidectomy. There are, however, other criteria that may influence the decision on the extent of surgery, such as the histopathology of the tumor, intraoperative frozen section, those with paropharyngeal extension, and revision surgery. The tendency of Warthin's tumors to occur multifocally and causing local inflammation can affect the decision on the type and extent of parotidectomy. For pleomorphic adenomas, surgeons must always keep in mind when formulating the surgical plan the possibility of capsular discontinuity and the presence of pseudopodia and tumor satellites that may increase the risk of tumor recurrence. Recurrent lesions usually require more extended techniques, such as the superficial and total parotidectomy. With Warthin's tumors, surgery is not mandatory for all cases. Deciding on the management is greatly influenced on being able to establish an accurate diagnosis, which is based on having a concordance between the patient's clinical data, imaging, and cytological evaluation. If a diagnosis of Warthin's tumor cannot be reliably established, surgery is indicated to assure the definitive diagnosis. If Warthin's tumor diagnosis is reliable, then active surveillance may be an option. Tumors that enlarge, causing cosmetic concerns or infection, then surgery may be done. For cases where a reliable diagnosis of Barton's tumor is established, active surveillance may be offered for cases with no clinical or cosmetic complaints. For elderly patients or those with comorbidities that may make them not a good surgical candidate. Current trend for active surveillance is to recommend 6 months of clinical follow-up with ultrasound evaluation to assess the interval growth of the tumor. For tumors that show interval increase in size or development of clinical problems, surgery may be offered, or in select cases, non-surgical options may be offered. With continuous medical advancements, there has been a tendency in the last 2 decades towards more gland-preserving surgeries, and you see a concomitant reduction in surgical complications. But again, as a surgeon, there should be a balance between performing adequate surgery and minimizing post-operative surgical complications. I came across this meta-analysis that compared the safety profile of 5 different parotid surgical interventions for benign tumors: the enucleation, extracapsular dissection, partial superficial, and total parotidectomy. They compared the incidence of developing the post-operative complications of tumor recurrence, facial nerve palsy, both temporary and permanent, Frey syndrome, Sialosyl, and salivary fistula. The review included 14 studies with 3,285 participants, and upon comparing for tumor recurrence among the 5 surgical techniques, as expected, the higher incidence was found in cases that underwent just enucleation. However, when the remaining 4 techniques were compared, your extracapsular dissection, partial superficial, and total parotidectomy, no significant difference in tumor recurrence risk was found. Temporary facial nerve weakness was found to have a higher incidence among cases of superficial parotidectomy when compared to your extracapsular dissection and partial superficial, but no significant difference between extracapsular dissection and partial superficial. Among the 4 latter techniques, extracapsular dissection showed the least incidence of temporary facial palsy. However, this technique is best when in the hands of an experienced surgeon, aided by facial nerve monitoring and visual magnification. Permanent facial palsy was defined in the study as persistent facial nerve weakness for more than 12 months post-operatively. This complication was found to have a higher incidence in cases of total parotidectomy compared to your superficial ones, and in cases of superficial parotidectomy when compared to partial superficial and extracapsular dissection. With Frey syndrome, a significant higher incidence was seen in cases of superficial and total parotidectomy. This could be likely due to parasympathetic nerve fibers being damaged as more extensive removal of parotid tissue is performed, increasing the risk of these nerves to aberrantly innervate the skin sweat glands as they heal post-operative. However, no significant difference was seen in the incidence of Sialosyl among all 4 techniques. With salivary fistula, it was found to have higher incidence with your partial superficial and superficial parotidectomy compared to extracapsular dissection and total parotidectomy. And between the 2 latter techniques, there was no significant difference. Possible explanation for this is the amount of trauma or disruption to the remaining salivary tissues, wherein with extracapsular dissection, there is less disturbance to the surrounding parotid parenchyma during your dissection, while in total parotidectomy, all salivary tissues are removed. So with the exclusion of enucleation, this slide simply summarizes the safety profile of the different parotid surgical techniques, and in terms of the incidence of tumor recurrence, transient and permanent facial palsy, Frey syndrome, Sialosyl, and salivary fistula. So let me end this lecture with a quote: "Making good decisions is a crucial skill at every level. At whatever stage you are in, whether you are an experienced surgeon or a novice, you should strive to always reach a good surgical decision by 1. doing comprehensive and proper evaluation of all aspects of a case, the clinical data, imaging, and such. And two, having the genuine intention and concern of helping your patient. These are my resources, and thank you for your kind attention. Good day.
Thank you, Dr. Jenny, for this very comprehensive talk about benign salivary gland tumor management. Now we open to the floor for discussions. Is there any questions or discussions?
This is Dr. Simple Ho. I saw Alfredo Pontejos, Professor Alfredo Pontejos is also online, and Alfredo, do you want to make some comments?
Oh yes, thank you. Of course, most of the time I would do a superficial parotidectomy for these lesions. I identify the nerve and cut through and remove as much as I can. Of course, of late, I've been doing partial superficial parotidectomy. I haven't really tried extracapsular because I would rather look for the nerve. Yes, I'm not much into, monitoring yet. So I still do a superficial parotidectomy or partial superficial parotidectomy in most of my cases. But Jenny Sach is not available now. It's the recording, so I must congratulate her for this presentation. Of course, short of this my other procedures or other techniques that are being done right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alfredo. I think I did exactly the same with you. Mostly partial superficial parotidectomy, and try to just remove the tumor with a good cup of a good cup of soft tissue, and try to preserve the facial nerve as much as possible. But you see, in the era of neural monitoring, I realized that some, especially for young colleagues, they love to do the extracapsular dissection and using the electro monitor, and so sometimes, in some instance, like Jennifer referred to, when the tumor is at the peripheral of the gland, especially at the lower posterior part, they don't routinely dig out the facial nerve. They probably would just using the extracapsular dissection technique, but with neural monitoring techniques, and to protect the facial nerve. I don't really have much experience on this, but I guess Peter, would you like to comment on this? Because I saw some of your cases. You are doing like this, Peter.
So I usually use nerve monitor for backups. So in the past, when I was in residency, when I'm not very familiar with the anatomy of the facial nerve main trunk, then I used to use the nerve monitor to assist me to find the facial nerve. But the problem is that because when the patient is intubated, the anesthesia will use the muscle relaxants. So the muscle relaxant will decrease the sensitivity of the machine. So So we need to wait for the muscle relaxant to um, to lower down so the machine can work. And another problem is that um, the machine will beep even though it's not the facial nerve, so it will cause some confusions. So right now, for some cases, I will use facial monitor just for backups if I'm not very sure, especially for the peripheral or distal branch, a very small branch, and usually have some communication. So I use that for just to make sure again. Yeah, but I'm not using the facial nerve monitor to find out the main trunk.
Yeah, I think I agree with Peter that the basic understanding, the basic knowledge of the facial nerve anatomy is the basics to is the fundamental to the aortic gland surgery. So we probably should understand the anatomy and find out the facial nerve if needed, and you should not rely on the neural monitoring to find out the facial nerve. Actually, the FDA they give the indication for the neural monitoring is to not to find out the facial nerve, but just to monitor the facial nerve injury. So that's the FDA indication. So I guess the basic anatomy is always the most important. Yep. And as a head and neck surgeon or an ENT surgeon who are interested in this kind of surgery, aortic gland surgery, you should know the anatomy as the first thing when you try to do the aortic gland surgery. Yeah. Any other comments? Justin or Beatrice? I think they are busy in the operation room because we have some cases today. So if there is no further question or comments, I would love to thank Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer Melo again. She used to be my past fellow, and she really did a great job when she was with us. And so I know she had a very good practice back to Manila in Philippine General Hospital, and has been one of the young talented head and neck surgeons in Philippines. I'm really very proud of her, and I intentionally invite Jennifer to give us a talk because I think whenever I saw some of my trainees can go back to their own country and then devote themselves to the development of head and neck surgery and help their own people, I really feel very, very proud. So I think Jennifer is just a very, very successful, very, very good example. And I certainly love to thank Professor Alfredo Pontejos because most of my fellows from Philippines were actually introduced by Alfredo, and so I guess our cooperation together has been really raised the standard of care, the surgical technique, everything in head and neck surgery in Taiwan and also in Philippines. So, well, thank you. And if there is no further, I would love to just give some for this month, we are going to have a fiscal meeting, which will be on June 29 at the end of this month, and that will be in Taipei, in one of the hospitals, one of the hotels and conference room, and we will open this for virtual webinar series again, and then everyone who are interested in joining us, please log in and listen to the lectures. All the invited speakers will be from several hospitals in around Taipei, and they are really very, very good speakers and very successful practitioners, and they will talk about not only head and neck surgery but also some others like autology or some others. So everyone most welcome to log in and join us with this physical meeting, but also it will be a combined physical and virtual meeting. So it will be in Victoria Hotel, 3rd floor on June 29th. So again, thank you for joining us today, and of course, thank you, Jennifer, for your talk, and also thank Alfredo for your comment. And for next month, July, we are going to have several speakers, international speakers, again on this retirement webinar series. Professor Christopher Goh from Singapore, and also Professor Nakayama, Meiji Nakayama from Yokohama, Japan, and my very long-time friend, Professor Kitty Red Ukanot from Thailand, that would share their experience with us in July. So hopefully I could see everyone in July meeting also. So thank you for everyone who participated in, and I hope you really have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Peter.
Yeah. Thank you, Alfredo, for your support.
Yes.
Have a good day. Yeah.
Good day. Yeah, sure. See you.
See you.